you have a chance, I'd love for you to get just the logo and the brand. Session, we are something new this year. Many of you are familiar with the concept TED Talks. You've seen many of my emails about it over the last year. We're really pleased to bring you 5 outstanding speakers with 5 very, very interesting and provoking and innovative topics. I would ask 2 things. Number 1, don't stare at your cell phones through this one. I get in the habit of it. I know we all do. This is something new. This is something different. This is a pilot for us. We've never done this. Actually, no one's ever done this. So this is something we really want to try to get some great feedback on in the end. I'm going to bring up Mark Weiner, our president and CEO of CJE. Excuse me. And Mark's going to be your master of ceremonies and host this morning and introduce the speakers. And I thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks, Don. Good morning, everybody. I sort of feel I should be doing a dance or some jokes up here. This is sort of a great stage. So thank you for the opportunity to do this. So Don called me up a number of months ago, and I guess Carol as well, and said, would I introduce something a little bit new? And I guess it's really in speaking of what this conference is all about. We've been trying to do new things and try to invigorate the association, which I think we've done. So I sort of reflect on the last presentation we had from Kathleen, which I think was some really tough, hard business stuff. We're sort of trying to transition into something which I might describe as being a little bit softer and sort of get into the why we do what we do, which talks a little bit about passion and inspiration and gives us sort of touches at our hearts. And I think it really speaks to me about what we do every day in our jobs. We juggle. You know, we juggle from dealing with the tough business decisions, and then the person comes into our office and it's an employee or a family member, and we're dealing with that. So we're always juggling. So it's my honor to sort of help introduce AJAS Speaks, and as Don said, it's really going to try to replicate sort of a little bit what TED Talk. So the format is going to be as follows. We're going to have 5 speakers, very different topics. They get about 15 minutes, very brief PowerPoints. And their purpose is to tell us a story and do it in an inspiring manner, and really help motivate us and touch us. We're not going to have questions after each presentation, but can we have questions when they're all done? So we'll do that. So in terms of my notes, so I can remember who's speaking, and I would ask everybody to just follow each other as one ends. When we'll come back up on stage and start. So Carol Silver Elliott will start. Then we'll go to Dan Reingold, my friend from the South Bronx, Michael Preece from Perth, Australia. Then we're going to have Emily Morgan, and then Rachel Hodesh. And so we'll have hopefully 5 very different, inspiring, fun topics, hopefully that will touch us in a very positive way. So thanks for being with us, and Carol.
Is the mic on? Yes, the mic is on now. Okay, let's start again. Ooh, it's a little boomy here. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you. I want to tell you about a man. His only sister was dying of cancer just a year after her husband unexpectedly died of a heart attack. She was just 47 and her children were 18 and 20. This man devoted himself to his sister. He stopped working. He drove across town every morning before his own young family was up for the day. And after a full day of caregiving, his family and his sister's family spent every evening together. Every evening, that is, until the day she died. And when that day came, the man went into a depression that ruled his life and shaped every day, every decision, and every attitude for the next 25 years, the rest of his life. Some 30 years later, his son and his daughter are as close as 2 siblings can be. He and his wife are gone, she at barely 60 and he a few years later. His son and his daughter are perhaps as close as he and his sister, perhaps even closer. One ordinary Saturday evening, her life changes forever when her phone rings and she learns that her brother has been killed in what can only be described as a freak accident. At that moment, her life changes forever. For months, she fights the urge to, as her husband calls it, go down the rabbit hole. She struggles and she grieves, and in the end, she makes a conscious and deliberate decision, a decision to move out of the darkness and into the light. When stuff happens in life, it just does. We think that we are treading on solid ground, that we are walking a firm path, but then something happens and we realize that our travels through life are all on shifting sands. When life presents us with loss of any kind, from the profound, such as loss of a loved one or illness, to the more mundane but equally unsettling, job loss, business downturns, and the like, some of us are able to bounce back and move forward in a positive way. Others are flattened, and the loss they have suffered leaves them wallowing in bitterness, bitterness becoming their new definition of self. What is the quality that makes the difference? It is resilience. And what I'm here to tell you is that resilience is a choice that we make. Not only is it a choice, it can be learned. We have the ability to decide to be better rather than bitter. We have the ability to decide how we are going to move forward. We have the power to choose whether loss is going to shape us or loss is going to define us. Resilience matters to us in our personal lives, certainly, making a difference in every day, but it also matters to us professionally. Do we show resilience in our professional lives, and in doing so, do we build resilient organizations? I want to tell you about Thomas Edison. In 1914, Edison was 67 years old, and we all know that in 1914, 67 was a whole lot older than it is now. His plant and factory caught fire and burned to the ground. Edison was standing outside, bathed in the light of the flames, when his son Charles came racing up to him, grateful to have found him alive. Edison turned to him and said, "Where's your mother? Go find her. She will never see anything like this as long as she lives." The baffled Charles found his mother, did as he was told, and Edison spent the rest of the night watching his life's work go up in flames. The next morning, all 7,000 of Edison's employees returned to work and began the process of rebuilding. Edison looked at the ruins and said, "There is great value in disaster. All our mistakes are burned up. Thank God we can start anew." I don't think we would say that, but that's what he said. He had over $2 million in losses. Imagine that. That's 1914, and only $200,000 in insurance. And yet, within weeks, the factory was up and running again, and within a month, they were producing products the world had never seen before. Is that genius at work? I don't think so. I think Edison and others like him are examples of resilience. We all know stories, or we all know incredible people with incredible ideas whom life has flattened. The difference is that quality. The difference is resilience. Resilience matters to us on all levels. Let's take a more contemporary example. Howard Schultz was the founder and first president of Starbucks. In 2000, he stepped aside to let others move his company forward. But by 2007, he saw that the company was not moving in the way he thought it ought to move. He wrote an internal memo detailing the ways in which he felt his stores had lost their soul. And in 2008, he stepped back into the CEO role. He has said that the most difficult part of that transition was telling the 180,000 employees of Starbucks and their families that they had made mistakes. At the time, there were many in the business world who thought that Starbucks could not survive. But not only was Schultz able to reinvent Starbucks, but he was able to regain the spirit. Resilient organizations must be led by resilient people. Resilient people are not those who go through life with their eyes tightly shut. They are not the people who seem to live charmed lives and never face adversity. Rather, they are realists who face what is in front of them and move forward. Some of us have these skills as part of our nature. Others develop them as we mature, but all of us can learn them and embrace them. The first is that resilient people do not let adversity define them. They make a choice not to let their pain, stress, suffering become their permanent identity. They acknowledge that pain is painful, stress is stressful, and that healing takes time. They accept that, not letting go and letting the pain take over, but making a conscious choice that they can and will come out the other side. The second is that resilient people are not blindly optimistic. They face the truth and they move forward through it. There is no Pollyanna, everything is coming up roses behavior in resilient leaders. Rather, there is a commitment to realism and a commitment to continuing to move forward. Resilient people look for life's lessons they can learn, lessons that will help their experiences to have meaning. Think for a moment about Viktor Frankl. Frankl was in Auschwitz when he discovered meaning therapy. He described the moment when he was walking across the camp, worrying about whether to trade his last cigarette for a bowl of soup, worrying about a new foreman whose reputation was as someone who was particularly sadistic. Suddenly, Frankl was disgusted with himself and how trivial and meaningless his life had become. He knew that in order to survive, he needed to find purpose. He imagined himself after the war giving a lecture on the psychology of the concentration camp. And later he wrote, "We must never forget that we may also find meaning in life, even when confronted with a hopeless situation, when facing a fate that cannot be changed." Third, resilience requires the ability to think differently, to improvise, to understand the experience and find a way to work around it. Being open to that as leaders means that we have to recognize that not just challenge equals opportunity, but also that adversity may equal opportunity. We are the authors of our own narratives in life. We write and tell our own story to ourselves and others. If our personal narrative is, "Life has thrown me some tough curves. I don't know why, and I don't know how to go on," then we have created our own reality. If our professional story similarly is, "Why does everyone else get all the breaks? We've worked so hard and it never seems to go our way," again, we have created a framework that may not serve us well. If, however, we consciously choose to be resilient and we edit our narrative to say, "Life is full of ups and downs. I can face them, we can face them, and we can weather them successfully because we believe in ourselves and what we can continue to achieve," then we not only help ourselves, but we help others to move strongly forward. That man I told you about, the one who lost his sister and never recovered, that was my dad. I was 9, and I watched grief rule his days and depression shape his identity all the rest of his life. When my own brother died and I lost my first and best friend, my cheerleader, my confidant, my ballast, my whole life was upended and I could not imagine how I was going to go on. But I knew that I had to make a deliberate choice, that I could not let that loss define me, that this was not the life I chose to live. My story had to be a story of survival, believing that we can face anything that comes at us and not only cope, but overcome. I may still not have found meaning in my brother's death, but I have found purpose. To keep my family connected, to keep his memory alive, to do good, to help others, and to live a good life for both of us. What do you do when times get tough? Do you bounce or splat? Is your attitude, "That's life and move on," or is it, "I just can't win"? Your choice, your tools, your life. Thank you.
On a fall day about 5 or 6 years ago, I left my office, and there was a man standing in the lobby of our building, sobbing, inconsolable. I went to him and I said, what's wrong, sir? Can I help you? He said, I'm here to visit my wife, and I have no one, I have nothing. I don't know who's going to take care of me. And I said, well, we can take care of you. Tell me your story. And his story was, like many stories of many of the people that we have in our facilities, he was a Holocaust survivor. His name was Bernie Adler. His life was saved because somebody told him to tell the Nazis he was a tailor. And he became a tailor. We took him into the Hebrew home, even though he had nothing. He had no assets, he had no money, and that's what we do, all of us. And when he came to the Hebrew home, the only thing he wanted was a sewing machine. And so we got him a sewing machine, and he became the tailor to the Hebrew home. And he always asked for people's jobs to do, and he became our resident tailor. And then he began to talk about his experiences in the camps. And what we did was we brought the children from our intergeneration program to sit and listen to him. And then he had a purpose in life, was to tell his story to the next generation. And he became a renowned and beloved figure in the Hebrew home, which he referred to as the Garden of Eden. Arthur Miller wrote a book called The Death of a Salesman. And in it, there's a very famous line that the mother uses for her children. And she says, "Attention must be paid." And that is the theme of my remarks today. We have a sacred obligation as Jewish care providers, us in particular. We have a sacred obligation to take care of the few remaining Holocaust survivors that are dying every day. There are 500,000 survivors left. There are 120,000 living in the United States. Most are living in Israel and a scattering still in the Soviet Union. And every 45 minutes, one of them dies. 1,000 a month, and count the days before they're gone. There is no other population that we've ever served, the Jewish homes. There's no other population that we've ever served that has gone through the kind of trauma that this group has gone through. For all the talk that we have about dignity and care and resident-centered persons, this group deserves more. And it is irrelevant what your resources are. You find them, because attention must be paid. All of you have survivors in your facilities. In this room, there are children of survivors, and attention must be paid. We have a sacred obligation to do so. How do we do it? First of all, recognize that some of our survivors want to talk and some don't. Let them. If they want to talk, help them. If they don't want to talk, it's okay. If they do want to talk, find opportunities for help to help them educate the next generation, because this is the last of them, the last people that the revisionist historians will claim never existed. So document it. Their needs are different than the residents that we take care of. In many ways, they're similar, the post-acute, the Alzheimer's, the other behaviors, but they carry baggage that none of our other residents carry. And we have to adapt the things we do in ways that we haven't even thought of yet. And I'm challenging you this morning to think about the ways that you're going to change the programs and services or add programs and services to for this population, because attention must be paid. Let me give you some examples of things that we might do. Is showering a resident who's a Holocaust survivor the same as showering another resident? I think not. For all the institutional shower rooms that we have in our facilities, imagine the experience that a Holocaust survivor, potentially with Alzheimer's, may go through in being asked to go into the showers. I was speaking last night with some of our colleagues, with Carol, with Molly, with Jeff Cohen, talking a little about some of the things they do, and something really inspiring came about, that a resident in one of their facilities became very agitated because the bedding in the room was the same color green that she remembered the guards wearing. Who would have thought of such a thing, to change the color in the room? Another case of a man who had a double room, and every night he packed all his belongings up and put them in the corner for fear that somebody would come in and take his belongings. And so the lesson was, find them a private room. No matter what, no matter how limited your private rooms are, a Holocaust survivor needs the privacy. In our case, we had a woman who eloped. And it was a cold March night, one of our worst fears. She eloped, and she ran across the front lawn and fell down the embankment towards the Hudson River. It took us about 8 hours with our cameras to realize that she had fallen, and then we had that awful 12 hours of trying to locate her and wondering whether we would find a body or a live victim. And a miracle, she survived. And why did she run away? Because she woke up in the night and thought she was in the camp. And she tried to escape. We had no idea what she was experiencing by being a member of our community. We need to have extra social workers on board to take care of the emotional needs that come from post-traumatic syndrome that never, ever goes away. We have to have the ability of our staff to recognize the sensitivity of Holocaust survivors. Imagine, in our facility, we have 84 nationalities. We have many employees who come from Africa who have experienced genocide. Aren't they the best people to create empathy with for our residents? And aren't our residents in a great position to have empathy with our staff? The intergenerational opportunity is more than an opportunity, it's an obligation. The ability for us to use the living history of our residents who are Holocaust survivors to educate the children who have never met one before is not just an opportunity for the catharsis of the individual, but it's an obligation that we have to do to create a generation that can say, no, I met a survivor. And it really happened. Attention must be paid. I'm very grateful for the book that Debbie's dad wrote. All of us in this room have read, I'm sure, many Holocaust books, from Elie Wiesel and many others. But this one struck home for me for a simple reason. First, of course, I felt like I knew him because he was one of our colleagues' dads. But there was another more powerful reason. It was written in the present tense. I've never read a Holocaust book written as though it were happening today. And I ended up finding myself coming back to this book. Most Holocaust books I have to work through slowly. I can only read about 10 or 15 pages at a time. This one I came back to like a gripping mystery. I had to know what was going to happen to Leon next. And he told the story, he tells the story, without the drama that you know is there. And the compelling feature is that a 16-year-old boy who's coming of age has to come of age watching his family be murdered and his community destroyed. And he comes out of it at the end, a very healthy man, and chooses to name his daughter, our Deborah, for his sister, who was murdered. So this was a gift from Leon for us, a Leo for us, and it was a reminder that we don't have much time left. It's really just a matter of a few more years before they're all gone. And regardless of what kind of condition, financial condition your facilities are in, regardless of all the challenges you have, regardless of all the issues that Dr. Griffin shared with us a few minutes ago, remember that for this group of people, attention must be paid. When I saw Mr. Adler before he died about 6 months ago, I went to his room. He was in bed, and he always smiled. And it was the last conversation I had with him. And I said, Bernie, for all the horror you had in life, you always smile. How do you do that? He said, Mr. Reingold, it's very simple. If I don't smile, then they won. Thank you.
How many of you here today really know the journey that you took to get here to where you are? Who really knows that journey? I'm not talking about the graduate school or the MBA or whatever else you took. What journey, what your family taught you. It's the journey to get to where you are today. The last few days, we've heard a lot of people talking about how important it is, the job that we do. It's vital. We don't just provide care for elders. We provide an environment, we provide a caring environment, and we respect, we hope to respect who they are, what they were all their life, and what they saw was going to be, how their life was going to end, and in what circumstances. I had to look at that. I came from a background, small country town, country of Victoria, many, many miles from where I currently live. At the end of year 10, I was called into the principal's office, and he said, Master Preece, I think it's time you left. You're not doing anything, you're not going anywhere. My mother said, he's going to jail. So, I left. She still says today, can't believe, doctor. Huh. Anyway, there I am, country Victoria, no one around me, no support. So I had to make some decisions, and I was going absolutely nowhere. And where I am today, where I am privileged to be today, was not what I thought was going to happen to me. I had no idea. No one had any idea. And this little talk, this little journey is about saying to you, do you understand what gives you the skills and the energy to do what you do so well, so very well? And my presence here for the last 3 years is testimony for what you do so well, because I'm here to learn from every single one of you, and everyone that I feel privileged to be able to sit down over a coffee or a meal or a glass of wine and talk to is enriching my life. So I've got a little bit of a journey, and I want to show you a few things. So really, at the end of the day, I learnt my finance from my postgrad and my MBA. I learnt leadership from postgrad, MBA, and my doctorate. But who gave me the skills to actually make that happen? Who gave me the skills? How did it happen that I actually learned how to do that? When you consider 16 years old, it's time you go out and get a job. My first job, by the way, was cleaning toilets at a garage, at a gas station. And I did that terribly. And I'm pushing the button. There we go. Okay, so there's the skills of a CEO. I'm not talking about those ones over there. We all learn those. I'm talking about the ones in red. Visionary, dream maker, multi-skilled, flexible. Good poker face. Oh, I learned that one. Compassionate, understand why people are important. I learned, how do you do that? It doesn't just happen. It actually comes from people who influence you negatively and positively. Who gave me permission to dream? Well, we all dream, but who gave me permission to tell people I'm dreaming and gave me the confidence to say, I've got a dream here and this is my vision and this is what we're going to do. Remember, if you can't dream it, you can't make it happen. So who gave me permission to do that? Who challenged me to understand a changing world? Whoa, this is a changing world. We've got the same problems that you've got here in Australia. Different system, but we've got the same challenges. Changing, changing, changing. Who gave me the skill to keep up with that and inspire others to keep up with it? And who forced me to look at realities, the realities of life? Negative, these were negative and positive. Okay, try again. That's my little journey. There's no science behind it. There's nothing in it. That's my age down the bottom, and you can see I'm close to 60. And that's my development up the side. This could be my next PhD, could it? This is my next PhD. So I looked at it, it's pretty static up till age 16. There's the first dive that took. So it's not all positive, it's not all, and a lot of it's negative. 40% was negative. 40% of what I went through in those last 40-odd years was negative. And I'm talking about negatives. Weren't just learning negatives. They could have made me take a completely different track in life, a much simpler track, get on the tools, dig the holes. But, so I had my first one, as you can see, up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down, until I get to where I am now. So it's an arbitrary number, 10. It's 10, it could be 20 or whatever. But when I plotted this, when I sat back and had a look, and the reason I had a look at this prior to getting the phone call from Don and the email was I was employed. 8,000 people in the community put their trust in me to do something. We were in trouble. Business was broke. Care was not as good as it could be. Some would say terrible. There was no direction, no vision. They depended on me doing something. So I actually stepped up and did it. And we've turned it around. We've got a vital little community now. We've got a great little business that's happening. We're profitable. Complaints are down to near zero. Compliments are 20 to 1 to complaints. We have engagement. We need new buildings. And what, $30 million? No, it doesn't matter, I'll get it. So we just need new buildings now. So I've got to change myself. Okay, how am I going to do that? How am I now going to be that next person? So I had a good look at myself. How am I going to do that? What allowed me to be where I am, and what's going to allow me to take that next step? Is there a deficiency? Do I need to get some help? So looking at this was the result. This is the result of doing that. So in looking at it, some hard lessons. I looked at the hard lessons. 40% of my life lessons, 19 major points in my life, were hard lessons. They were self and other generated. Self and other generated. So within that first one there was working through poor performance. It was my first job. And just to put it into perspective, I think I had an inkling I needed to be sorted out. So I went and joined our Air Force. And in those days, if you didn't trip as you went over the step, you were in. I didn't trip. I got in, I became a maintenance technician, and my first job, didn't have no idea, just no idea. Terrible, terrible, terrible. And it could have just stopped there. They wanted me out, couldn't do the job. So I just drank the concrete and hardened up and worked through it over a few months. That could have easily changed everything from that point onwards. There's only one of those, though. When I look back at all these 40 years, only one time was it like that. Look at myself critically. That came when I was 26 years old. I was promoted within the Air Force way above my ability. Right place, wrong time. Got promoted way out of my depths, totally out of my depths. And one person, junior to myself, had the intestinal fortitude to walk up to me and say, "You're not doing this very well. How could you tell your boss you're not a good leader?" And he did. And he told me straight, right between the eyes. And I heard it that second, that spot, and I can remember where I was when he did that. And I bumped into that man a month ago. In fact, when I was doing this, so this is all about fate. So that happened to me, and had he not said that, I probably would have spiraled to another direction again. Focus on strength and a focus and strength. There were two situations in my life where I had no focus and I didn't have the strength to pull myself through it. But I did it. I had to do it. And then the last one, how not to. 3 people in my life that their sole task in life was to remove me. This is a pattern, isn't it? To remove me from, and you've probably all had it, but their sole purpose at that time was to say, this guy's not worth it. It's not worth it. We need to get rid of him. And I just worked hard through that process. So I learnt how not to do it, and I learnt That's not how you build leaders. It gave me strength, but it could very much easily been very, very, very different. Okay, so the highs, the good lessons. Okay, doing it hard. That first one, life realities. Only one, just once in 19 critical issues, critical things in my life was to just work out realities. And again, it was a job, it wasn't focused, it wasn't a person, but it was a position where I'd needed to work through a really, really hard job. How many times are you tasked with something and you just go, I can't do it. I just can't do this. But if you continue, however you continue, whatever process you take and whether you get help or whatever you do, you come out the end of it and you're actually so strong from that process. But did you learn from it? Do you understand what you learned from that process? And I certainly did from this. And this was in a position where when I left the Air Force, I knew there was something out there for me. It was only after 13 years. And I had my first job as a supervisor in a factory. And I'd been there for 4 months, and I worked, and I turned up one Friday afternoon for my shift. My card was gone. I rang the manager and said, I said, oh, it's all right, we've got it, I'll bring it in to you. And I thought, no, there's something wrong here. Sure enough, 10 minutes before the shift finishes at midnight, here's your card, here's your severance pay. 4 months. And I had to drive home to my wife and my 2 young children and say, I don't have a job. And that was it was just a downturn in the industry. First in, last out. And I had to really, really work through that and not dip down into self-esteem issues. And our people before us, not the same, absolutely not the same as what Carol was talking about, but it's about what's inside you to pull yourself through. Unwavering focus. That is a lady named Thalia. Thalia is the daughter of one of our residents. Thalia is at my office every single day. That lady, I absolutely love her to death, and would like her to progress too. But she is so focused on us getting it right. She will not let me not get it right. And I've bonded with this lady, and she is so strong. And this is only in the last 2 years that she makes such a difference to my life. But she never lets me get away with anything. Good Jewish mother. Okay. 2 times inner strength. Just 2 leaders. One of these leaders was half my age. Boy, God, could she lead? Could she get the best out of me? And it took me 6 months to understand that she was actually manipulating me, getting me to do what I need to do to get the absolute best out of me for the business, for the care environment that I was managing. And that environment, I was managing 1,200 beds, 13 facilities. And she let me run with that and be the very best I could be. And when I sat back and went, hang on a minute, she doesn't know the business, I do, and she's manipulated me to be the best I can be, and the outcome is phenomenal. That's a skill. That is a real skill. And I picked that one up. And I'm still working on it. Motivation under extreme pressure. 2 environments that were just, most of my staff were looking to leave. I inherited those people and there was nothing going to keep them there. So how do I get the job done? How do you get the job done when people don't want to be there? They're just there to pick up the paycheck until the day they can leave, until they get another job. And we're talking about half of the staff. How do you motivate people like that? How do you turn that around? 1/4 of them still left, 1/4 of them stayed, and we got real motivation out of it. Okay, rebuilding self. 2 adverse situations, but I had 2 people that took a journey with me that were able to just say, you're doing okay. Simple words, you're okay. You're okay. Come and see me if you're not feeling okay, but you're okay. 2 of those situations. 2 inspiring people. One of them's not here at the moment, and she's a member of AJAS, and she from Florida, Jenny Frummer. Some of you may know her. I met Jenny a number of years ago, and she's absolutely inspiring to me. And the two commitments, my wife Sandra, of course, getting married at age 20, and then going to night school and getting to where I am today. So those are the two issues for myself. So that was just that. So in conclusion, this journey has been fantastic. I encourage you, if you are looking at developing yourself or developing your people or even attacking a new project, have a look at where you've learned. Have a look at what's given you what you do so very well. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Emily Morgan, and my talk today, I took it off the TED Talk idea, has 4 main words: advocate, jump in, adapt, and then share. Do you all know where your passion is? I've listened to many of you over the last few days, and I've talked to you, I've sat in your programs, and I have to say as a group, most of you can articulate like that what your passion is. Can the rest of the world? What about your staff? Do they have that passion? Do they know where yours is? Do they know what you're doing? My advocacy and my passion is end-of-life conversations for people who are dying. I trained originally as a speech-language pathologist. The favorite patients that I like are the traumatic brain injured. I like the neurologically impaired. I like the ventilator-dependent patients. I like the ones that have a lot of needs. Now, if you've never been on a ventilator unit, it's a little unworldly. The machines breathe for the patients. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. But every time that patient coughs, jiggles in his bed, has a change in airflow, the beeps go off. Beep, 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 beep. It all depends. CO2 has one beep, oxygen has another, positioning has another. Needs for suctioning, a whole another set of sounds. For the patients, it's very frightening. They can't move. They can't call for help. There is no conversation. I liken it to being in a yoga class. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. And there's a big delivery truck out back. Beep, 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 beep. It's like, really? How can you relax like that? I didn't understand, though, what it meant to be that patient in that bed until my late husband, Terry Morgan, contracted Guillain-Barré, September 22nd of 2001. And he lived as a quadriplegic, vent-dependent man. Brain was fine, but locked in. The only thing he could do was blink his eyes for the next 34 months. Now, I was the professional. I ran the machines. I put on the speaking valves. You see, you have to understand that that ventilator either is managed by a tube through their mouth or a hole in their neck. And that bypasses your ability to talk. Now, we can manipulate that for some patients. We can change the ventilator flow. We can put on what's called a speaking valve. Passimir makes one of the versions, and there's others. But we have them for pediatrics all the way to adults, neonates, all the way. It's amazing what technology can do. But the thing is that they can't talk unless there's someone there to put that valve on. And only certain people, by credentialing and training, are allowed to do that. Now, when I did it for my patients, I didn't think much about it. I went in, I gave my allotted period of time, I worked with the families, I made some phone calls if that was possible. It was a party trick. And I hate to say it, but it was. Your 15 minutes of fame are up, Mr. Jones. Let's move on to the next patient. Let's do it again for Mrs. Smith. At 5 o'clock at night, I went home. I thought about my patients. I did research on what I needed to do for them. I came in if there was an emergency. but I didn't really think about him. And now I'm sitting in that hard caregiver chair on the opposite side of the bed. And where the heck were those therapists? Really? I mean, 10 o'clock at night, he's anxious. He needs to tell me something. He might die tonight. He wanted to talk to his son in the military, another world apart. Well, time change, how do you do that? Where were those people who controlled that machine and that valve? I didn't know it then, but after he died, I decided something has to change. So, how do you make change? How do you just jump in? For some of you, I listened yesterday as we all talk about retirement. How are we going to jump into that next phase of our life, the third age? Are we going to do it gracefully? Are we just going to do it? Nike says, just do it. Just do it, right? That's great for shoes. I'm not so sure about lives sometimes. But I put a focus group together. Young people, old friends, colleagues, variety, crazy people. I have crazy friends, so they came up with crazy ideas. One camp said, take a cruise. The other camp said, go to law school. I went to law school. And trust me, I should have taken that cruise. Let me tell you, 52 years old, and your classmate sitting behind you is Boomer, the kid that you were the carpool mom when he was in 2nd grade. It's not good. Now, the school I went to, I was very fortunate. They gave me a full scholarship. They allowed me to come in. I was diversity, meaning old lady, okay? And I gravitated to the end-of-life conversations, and I gravitated to the point of elder law. Now, I was already old, so that made sense. But when you graduate and you pass the bar and you're 55, do you think a law firm's going to hire you? No. They don't talk about age discrimination, but it's a fact. Yeah, they just do it. Exactly. And one of the senior partners who had sponsored me through competitions and part of my scholarship funding and so forth, very nice man, he sat me down over lunch and he said, look, I can't use you and abuse you if you were 20. Because you know me, you know my wife, you know my faith community, and really, I can't use you like that. I said, well, what do I do? Where do I go? He said, where's your passion? Hell, if I knew that, I wouldn't have gone to law school. You know, I don't know. Within a week, I got a call from the very same hospital where my husband had been a patient. Remember when you sat in that hard caregiver chair and you challenged us day after day after day after day? How about if you come and now work for us and you advocate for other patients? You tell us when we need to improve our quality of life for these patients. How about if you help us? Because in our situation, many of our patients choose to remove their life support. They choose to die in our settings. How about if you make sure from a legal perspective we're doing it right? And because you're faith-based, how about if you make sure we address their spiritual needs, not just their physical needs? We got good nurses. We've got good therapists. But how about if you identify those other intangibles that we as a for-profit secular organization might be missing? Okay, I'll jump in, I'll do it. Some of you talked yesterday about retirement. Like, well, I'm tired of dealing with the board and the board's direction or the organization or this or that. Trust me, you got to jump in sometimes and you have to learn to adapt. Face what you're going to face and figure it out. I find it easier to ask forgiveness rather than permission, right? I shave the edges off sometimes of those square pegs and make them fit in that round hole and say, this is what we're going to do. So when I started at this hospital, I said, this is what we're going to do. The therapists who control those speaking valves are going to make themselves available at the end of life in particular, not just somebody who's every day wants to call at 9 p.m. because they get you out of bed and get you there. But we're really going to work with them, and I'm going to lead by example. Okay, well, that's not our policy. Oh, I don't care. That's what I said we're going to do. And do you know, when you can't talk and you can't communicate, your anxiety goes way up at night. And when do you need to be able to have that person come in? It's like babies. OBGYNs tell you babies are delivered at 2 a.m., right? That's it. You have to be available. You have to adapt. So, one night, about 11 o'clock, I get a call from the hospital. We have a man, he came 4 hours away from Naples, Florida, came up by ambulance. His wife drove the car behind him. He's frantic, and we don't know what's wrong. He's on a ventilator. He can't talk. He can write a little. We've done charades. We've done yes-no cards. We've done ABC cards. We've done everything we could. We called the doctor. We got an order. Can you come talk to him? Okay. So I went in. Talked to his wife for a little bit, talked to him, got him settled down, got him, comfortable. And I said, so what's the problem? Wife said, I don't know. I just don't know. He's frantic, and I can't figure it out. And by now, she's exhausted. I'd been in her chair. I understood that. She couldn't think. So I said, what does he do for a living? Oh, well, he's a rabbi. Gotcha. Now we got a whole different set of issues. Now, I'm not Jewish. I don't read Hebrew. I didn't know that there's that great app that Mr. Feldman showed us yesterday about I could go online now and find out all the things I need to know Jewish. I didn't know this for end of life. I don't have in my Rolodex a rabbi I can call to ask questions. I call my daughter-in-law who's Jewish, say, what do you know? She says, I don't know. I'm like, oh, great. You're real helpful. Thank you. Click. So we tried the speaking valve. He was very fragile. Didn't work so hot. But I said to him, let me guess, today's Wednesday. You know you're dying. Yep. What do you want to do? Huh? I said, let me ask you some yes-no questions. Friday night, Sabbath, you want to have prayers, right? Yes. We'll make it happen. How do I have to make that happen? He shrugs his shoulder. Okay, I don't know. You're a big help. His wife falls asleep on the cot next to him, and I'm like, all right, what do I do? Thank God for Google and Siri. Hello, Siri. I need candles, but I can't have an open flame. Am I allowed to use batteries? The answer, yeah. You know, batteries have all the energy that you need, just like a wax candle or an oil candle. Electric candles, not so much. Okay, now we're on the hunt for battery-operated candles. How do I make a tallit? How do I make a prayer shawl if I can't get his wife to bring one in? Who do I call? What do I do? Answer, well, there's lots of directions and instructions on the internet. Really, I wanted Martha Stewart. I wanted her to make me one right then. I did not want to have to make one myself. But we made do. We called his family. We asked them to come in. They drove in on Friday evening, and they sat there. I assembled the team, nurses, to make sure that he was going to be comfortable. If we got too fragile, we could readjust the medication. The last thing I wanted him to do was die in the middle of the prayer service. I draped his prayer shawl around him, adjusted it for all the mechanisms that we had to do. And I said to him, you know, I don't know anything about Hebrew, but I got to tell you, I'm looking at this prayer book, and this is a lot of prayers. This is a lot. And I don't think you're going to be able to do them all. Can we share the wealth here among some of the people? I said, okay, I got a plan. I'm going to adapt. We're going to have intermissions. And he laughed and he said, no, it's called silent meditations. Gotcha. I'm an Episcopalian. We adapt to everything, okay? So not a problem. So we had our silent meditations, and he made it through. The next afternoon, he passed away with his wife and his daughters at his side. What that did for him is immeasurable. What it did for the staff, priceless, as MasterCard says. Many of the people who witnessed it and worked with him that night were not Jewish. Many of them, I dare say, probably had no definable faith, and yet everyone was touched by how important this was to him and to his family in order for him to have what we call a good death. That started my advocacy. Since then, I have been called in the middle of the night to sometimes do confrontations with attorneys, reconciliations with ex-wives, children, and place a few bets with some bookies. I mean, it runs the gamut. So how do we do this? For me, it's share. You all have given me an opportunity to share my story and my advocacy. Many of you have had stories and opportunities throughout this program to share. And I would challenge you to go back to your communities and continue to share. As the other speakers have said, tell your story. Tell the advocacy. You're a storytelling tradition. Tell it, because it's going to help the rest of us in the world who don't come from that faith-based tradition. Thank you.
Why the ladies in the laundry room? It's a great question, isn't it? I mean, if you think about it, how often do we really see them, right? I'm here today to tell you a story about why I chose the ladies in the laundry room, why I do what I do because of them. I want you to meet Anna. Anna Vanetta Graves was born in the hollers of Middlesboro, Kentucky, youngest of 22, twin, daughter of slaves. Anna is the reason why I like the ladies in the laundry room. Anna used to tell people that I stuck. See, she raised over 400 children in the city of Cincinnati over a span of 50 years. And Anna, whenever she was with me, she would say, she stuck. She would never, like, whenever we were together, she would tell everyone that I stuck. And I used to ask her why. And she would say, there was something about you. So Miss Anna, at the age of 20, left with her twin sister, Kathleen, who we also called Bess, and her sister, Lucy B., and they drove up to Cincinnati, Ohio. Go figure. And while she was in Cincinnati, she decided that after working as a waitress, she was going to become a nurse. And her job as a nurse started in General Hospital in Cincinnati, Ohio. And then she moved on to doing something that she really loved, taking care of babies. So how many of you have seen The Help? Read the book? That was Anna. In and out, 4 weeks, raising children. She was so good that by the time she ended her career, she was raising the children of the children she had raised. And there are still people at Cedar Village that will tell you stories about how Anna made sure her children never cried. I had the privilege of being Anna's caregiver. In this photo, Anna is 97 years old. For the last 10 years of her life, I was her caregiver. Talk about full circle, right? So when people ask me why I chose the topic, the ladies in the laundry room, it was really simple. Because Anna taught me one really important thing: to never see color. In fact, what's funny about this story, and I've not shared it with many people, is when my son Noah, who is now 11, was born, she was wheeling herself around the nursing home and she was telling people, I'm so worried, I'm so worried, I'm so worried. Miss Rachel named the baby something that is going to be terrible. And they're like, what's wrong? And they're like, she named him Moses. How is he going to live up to the name Moses? So when we finally saw her after 10 days, and we had to see her in the parking lot, Noah's father and myself were like, his name's not Moses, his name is Noah. She goes, oh my goodness, how is he going to live up to the name Noah? I said, he'll be fine. So anyway, Anna had a pretty amazing career, and as you can see, I really had the pleasure. But what led me into my career is interesting. You know, I've been doing this for over 20 years. I've been in for-profits, not-for-profits, worked in Israel, run community-based service programs, worked in the inner city, but I always come back to the nonprofit world, and I always came back to the nursing home. And I always came back to a community that embraced their frontline staff. Because most of our frontline staff are really not frontline staff, are they? They're your back staff. They're behind closed doors. We don't see them. We don't really know much about them, do we? I mean, do we really know them? I don't know. I don't think so. So I thought today I would really have us all look at what we really see in our staff and what we really see in our future of our organization. Who are these people? Are they the hospitality aides or the nursing assistants who will hold a resident's hand when they're agitated, get them that glass of water? Is it your server in your dining room who always has that cup of coffee or Diet Coke on the table for the resident who comes in? Is it the receptionist in your community who knows every resident's name, every family member's name, and can tell you where the resident is in that second? All of those people make a difference and make our lives as professionals pretty incredible. But there's a group of women that we always forget about. Those women who give the extra touches of excellence are the ladies in the laundry room. I'd like you all to just bear with me, okay? If you all can close your eyes for a minute. Do it, please, because I know some of you won't, but I'm just go out of your comfort zone. And I want you all to close your eyes, and I want you to imagine your office. Some of you are not closing your eyes. I can see you. I cannot hear, but I can see. So what I want you all to do is I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to imagine your office. It's beautiful, isn't it? Comfy chair, great desk, silver picture frames, right, with all your kids from your ski trips, your trips across the country. Feels really great. Maybe you can see that resident walking outside with the dog. We have one resident who always walks with her dog and never cleans up after herself, so we always watch that happen. Or the trees or the ocean. Feels good, doesn't it? Open your eyes now. This is Miss Joyce's office. How's it feel? You ever go down and see your Miss Joyce's office? Her pictures are taped to the wall. There's not one silver picture frame. This is her office, this is her desk, and this is the essence of what it is like to work or to be a lady in the laundry room. I met Miss Joyce when I was 19 years old. I was working at the Orthodox Jewish Home, and she was working in the laundry room. She was a character. Fast forward a few years later, 1997, Miss Joyce goes from the Orthodox Jewish Home to the grand opening the first day, March 16th, 1997, to Cedar Village. And where does she go? To the laundry room. So there, Miss Joyce makes her journey. But if you think about it, we all have Miss Joyce's, don't we? Because when Miss Joyce leaves at the end of the day, where does she go? Does she go home? No. Miss Joyce, 3 to 4 days a week, will leave Cedar Village, and she will go to her second job as a nursing assistant, working 12 hours as a nursing assistant after already pulling a 10-hour shift. And why does she do it? Because she's part of that part of our society that we really don't talk about. We don't talk about them, the working poor. And they're the largest part of the healthcare industry in the United States today. And so I felt it was very important for all of us to remind ourselves that without the Miss Joyce's of the world, who gets the nightgowns cleaned for our residents, or who cleans the towels, or who cleans the pajamas, who finds that hearing aid, or fixes that hem, right? So in May, Miss Joyce celebrated her 30th year with the organization. Now, when I returned to Cedar Village after a 2.5-year sabbatical, that's what I called it, in Las Vegas, it was definitely a sabbatical, and I returned, Miss Joyce saw me in the line at the deli, and she came up to me and she said, "I heard you were back." I said, "I'm back." And she looked down at my feet, and she said, "I need those shoes." I said, "What?" She goes, "I want those shoes. I need those shoes." I mean, I loved these shoes. I remember where I bought them in Las Vegas, and they were really great, and I packed them, and I was like, okay. So the next day, came into work, went down to the laundry room, walked through that long white hallway into that room that's gray and cold, that no one goes into, opening the door. They couldn't hear me because it was so loud, and it was 100 degrees in there because it was summertime. But I found Miss Joycey, and I said, here you go. Why did I give her those shoes? Probably not because she couldn't afford them, because I can guarantee you after working 2 jobs, and she will tell you we have the best 403B plan in the state, and she tells all new employees that. It wasn't because she couldn't afford them. It was because she asked, and because I knew that those shoes would mean something to her, and I knew that those shoes would make it to church every Sunday. So when I went up to hug her and congratulate her afterwards, she said, look down. And I looked down, and she was wearing the shoes. You know, it's those little things, it's those little touches that we don't realize that we really make a difference in the lives of our staff, and that we listen and we follow their journey, and we want to be a part of everything that they do. Today, 1/3 of our population, over 100 million people, live in poverty. There are between 800,000 to 1 million people working in what we call the domestic work environment, of which 95% of them are women. The Miss Joyceys, the Annas of the world. And their day looks like this. This is their office. During my research for this bucket list, as Don knows I like to call it, it's one of my bucket list things, I interviewed some AJAS communities. We have one AJAS community that is a food pantry for their employees, so that their employees don't go home hungry. We have another AJAS community that provides transportation for their staff. Because if they didn't provide transportation for our staff, it's making $9 an hour, which is what many of our staff start at, they wouldn't get to work. We have an AJAS organization that when there's a blizzard coming, they will prepare a giant room for them with beds and blankets and provide food. We have tuition reimbursement programs. We even have a community that has a hardship fund that any staff person, even if they're a line staff, can put $1 away a week from their paycheck. And an employee can go into the HR director's office and borrow up to, I'm sorry, I apologize, not borrow, take up to $500 a year, no questions asked. And the money comes from their coworkers. So it's a double mitzvah, right? The person isn't embarrassed, they get to stay in their home, and at the same time, or they get to keep their car, and at the same time, their colleagues are supporting them and doing good. It's a pretty amazing feeling. Now I'm describing these things. Are we all thinking about what we do? What we do to help our employees? What we do to help our line staff? We provide 1 or 2 parties a year, maybe a 25-cent raise. Cincinnati's different. We don't have a union. We're able to do it a little different. You know, the conversations I have with some of my colleagues, we're not touching that, we have unions. But you know what, I don't care. Because at the end of the day, we are still responsible for the men and women, in our case, the women in the laundry room, that care for our residents. Because if it wasn't for them, the lost dentures wouldn't be found, right? The hearing aids, the hem of the pants that's fixed miraculously. Those are the touches that our ladies in the laundry room and our employees do. When I was 13, Anna, at that point, thank goodness, had retired. I would go and visit her in the summer every Tuesday. We had this thing, my dad would drop me off, and I would go, and I would hang out with her for the day, and we'd get in her Chevy Nova. Remember the Chevy Novas? They were just like a tin thing, and no seatbelt, so no air conditioning. So we'd go downtown to, excuse my disrespect, but I'm being blunt, the projects. And we would go into the projects and we would pick up Lucy B. So let's see, Anna at the time was, I don't know, 80, so that made Lucy B like 92. Lucy B used to dress like Minnie Pearl. Who remembers Minnie Pearl from Hee Haw with the big hats and the big bags? So everything was a production with Lucy B. So Lucy B would get in the car and we would go to a HUD housing building, right? Senior HUD housing. We would walk in, and here I am, 13, with Lucy B and Anna, and Lucy B would always walk into the door, and when she saw everyone, she'd go, "Howdy," and everyone would cheer. And I thought, this is so not normal, but this is their life, and this is fun. So I thought, okay, so this should be interesting. So we go, and we played bingo, but this was a different type of bingo. This bingo got them through the next week to the next bingo because their prize was a bag full of toiletries. Everyone always won at that bingo. Everyone always left with a brown bag full of toiletries. There was also a pot, and you could win $50. So this was in the 80s, so here I am, I'm 13 and $50. Oh my gosh, if I won the pot, $50, it'd be so amazing. So we go, and my dad would always send me money so I could buy cards for them. And we go, and I buy the bingo cards. We're sitting at the table, and I win. And Anna looks at me. And I slid the card over to Lucy B. And Lucy B goes, "Bingo!" And it was at that point I realized that I was different. See, I never thought I was different. I thought I was just the same as Anna. I didn't see any difference. I thought we were alike, right? How are we different? She was my nurse. She raised me. She took care of me. She taught me not to see color. But I realized at that point that that $50 that she and her sister were going to share for the week would get her through the next week. That would be, between that and the toiletry bag, would get her through the next week. And I realized again that the Annas of the world were going to lead me to work with our ladies in the laundry room, because I would understand and I wouldn't judge. And I drive them crazy when I go down to the laundry room and visit them. I make them crazy. But Anna taught me not to see that, and Anna taught me to respect. And it was at that moment that day that I realized that she was poor. But she wasn't. Because after I got married, Anna had been putting money away for me and gave me $15,000 to put a loan on my first house. That was my deposit for my first house. So what I judged as someone being poor was not poor. She was just really terrific. When Anna died, she died in an inner city nursing home. It was an accident. They were glad I didn't. I just walked in, asked for a meeting with the DON. I said, "Admit you were at fault. You left her on the floor for a day. She broke her hip. She never woke up. Just admit it." They wouldn't, but I think they knew if they did, it would be trouble. But I wanted them to admit it. Today's Miss Joycey's birthday. There's Miss Joycey right back there with some of the girls from the laundry room. I am going to ask all of you, when you go back to your communities, and maybe some of you do it, I want you to take a moment to go down to the laundry room and talk with the ladies that work there, because they are truly the fabric and the essence of your community. Because without them, without these women, we would not be able to do the jobs we do. And it takes us completely out of our comfort zone. But I gotta tell you, Karen Raitt, the Director of Facility Services at Cedar Village, has taught me not only to ask the why, but ask the what. Why do we do what we do, and what can we do to make it better? And Karen would tell you that it is because of these women, and I agree, that we are who we are, and our residents are healthy and safe and cared for because of the ladies in the laundry room. Thank you.
Good presentations, it was great stories, and what was really true in
great. This was something new. Thanks, Monica. This was a great. We heard from 5 fabulous people who have worked so hard on these presentations over the last several months, and I thank them all very much. And I think they all deserve a round of applause again. Thank you. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day.